What if the waves of Actium had carried victory eastward? What if Cleopatra's Egypt and Antony's Rome had ruled together, blending east and west, crown and senate, gods and pharaohs? Would Europe have become an empire of marble and legions, or a realm of silk, pyramids, and eternal queens? How different would our history sound if the sea had chosen another wind? The year is 31 BCE. The Republic is dying, not from invasion, but from the weight of its own glory. Two leaders, once brothers in arms, now sail against each other. Their struggle is not only for power, but for the very idea of what Rome and Europe should become.
They call me traitor, lover, dreamer. Maybe I am all three. I am Marcus Antonius. But tell me, what is treason, eh? To fight for a queen who stood beside me when my own senate turned their back. They say I fell for beauty. But they forget, beauty can be stronger than fear, and amore more dangerous than steel.
To the north, Octavian waits, precise, patient, a man who sees not glory, but the shape of empire. To the south, Antony and Cleopatra command a fleet vast and golden, heavy with promise and pride. Between them lies the narrow sea and the future of the Western world.
Let Octavian count his ships, weigh his odds. I have Cleopatra, and men who would rather burn than bow. If I must lose, then I lose as Rome once conquered, con onore e con fuoco.
One battle, one tide, one turning point. When the oars of Actium cut through the water, they also carved the path to emperors, dynasties, and centuries of dominion. Welcome to the podcast. Battles that shaped Europe.
We shall never surrender!
The Battle of Actium. Part 1. The World Before the Battle. After Alesia, Rome stood triumphant. Gaul was tamed, Vercingetorix bound in chains, and the Republic basked in glory. But peace is the enemy of ambition. What happens when an empire built on conquest runs out of enemies to fight, except itself? Europe was changing. In the north, Celtic tribes learned to live under Roman rule. Their lands laced with new roads, their gods sharing temples with Jupiter. In Hispania, Roman towns grew from military camps, and Latin words began to echo where once only Iberian tongues were heard. In the east, trade with Parthia and India filled Rome's coffers with silk, spice, and gold, but also with arrogance. The Republic had conquered the world, yet could no longer rule itself. How long can a republic survive when its heroes become rivals, and its victories become poison?
When I was young, we still spoke of honor, of the Senate, of Roma's destiny. Then came Caesar, and tutto changed. He made Rome great again, see, but in doing so, he made her fragile. For how can one man hold so much power and still call it a republic?
The Senate trembled at Caesar's shadow, and so they struck him down. But they did not kill his idea. They set it free. From his ashes rose the second triumvirate, Octavian, Marcus Antonius, and Lepidus, a promise to avenge Caesar's murderers and restore order. Yet revenge has a price. Once paid in blood, it demands more. Can vengeance ever build peace? Can three rulers share one world when each dreams of wearing the same crown?
We divided the world like conquerors. I took the east, Octavian the west, and poor Lepidus, the scraps that remained. At first it worked. I had Cleopatra, Regina, Alleata, strategist. She ruled with grace. I fought with steel. Together we brought prosperity to the East, while Octavian counted coins and crafted menzogne, lies that travel faster than truth.
And lies are sharper than swords. Octavian understood something Antony never cared for. That in Rome, victory begins with words. He painted Antony as the traitor, seduced by the East, enslaved by Cleopatra's charms. And in the marble corridors of power, that story spread faster than truth. What is more dangerous? A blade on the battlefield or a whisper in the Senate? Can one queen truly threaten an empire? Or is fear itself the real enemy of Rome?
They fear what they don't understand. Cleopatra is not a temptress, she is a ruler. She speaks to me of unity, of a world where Rome and Egypt share destiny, not domination. But Octavian, he cannot share. He must rule alone.
And so, as the Mediterranean world held its breath, armies began to move. In the east, Antony's banners rose over Greece, Asia, and Egypt. In the west, Octavian's fleets gathered under his admiral Agrippa. The old world, the Republic, stood on its last edge. From Elysia's fields to Actium's waters, only 2 generations had passed. Yet Europe was no longer the same. Of the world turned their spears against each other. Rome was about to choose its future, with oars, sails, and blood. And as the storm gathered over the Ionian Sea, fleets took form like moving fortresses of wood and fire. Every man aboard knew the outcome would not only decide who ruled Rome, but what kind of world their children would inherit. Let us now see how the armies gathered, and how the final duel for the soul of Europe was set in motion. Part 2. The Armies Gather. The year is 31, BCE. The waters near Actium, on the western coast of Greece, are thick with tension and tar. 2 immense forces are converging, not merely armies, but entire visions of the world. On one side stands Marcus Antonius, master of the East. His fleet, around 500 warships, many massive, built in the shipyards of Egypt and Syria. At their heart sails the treasure and pride of Cleopatra VII, Queen of Egypt, her golden flagship gleaming like a floating temple of the sun. Antony's ships are grand and slow, packed with soldiers, archers, siege weapons, and dreams of empire stretching from the Nile to the Tiber.
Ah, my fleet. She was not just a ships on the water, no. Every plank, every oar, every sail carried the mark of the East's wealth and Roma's discipline. I did not come here to fight as a rebel, ma come un Romano vero, as a true Roman, one who still believed that Rome could be greater than her borders.
Facing him stands Octavian, commander of roughly 400 lighter, faster ships, built for maneuver, not grandeur. His admiral, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, is a genius of the sea, calm, precise, deadly. They understand that victory will not come from strength, but from patience, from letting Antony's massive fleet trap itself in the narrow gulf.
Agrippa, he knew the sea like I know the sound of my own heart. He struck where I was weak. The food, the coasts, the courage of men born to fight on land, not waves. But still they followed me, sempre, always, because they believed, as I did, that Rome's fate must be chosen by Romans, not by ambition wearing the mask of order.
In Antony's camp, Confidence began to crack. Months of skirmishes, hunger, disease, and whispers of desertion. Cleopatra's presence divided the ranks. To some, she was a symbol of unity and divine favor. To others, the serpent of Egypt who had lured Antony from reason. What binds an army more tightly? Loyalty or belief? And what shatters it faster? Doubt or pride?
They say I fought for her. No. I fought with her. Insieme. Together. For a dream that Rome could see itself not as conqueror, but as part of a greater world. But maybe, see, I asked too much of men who only wanted to go home, to their families, to la pace.
Across the strait, Octavian's legions stood disciplined, fed, and confident. He did not need to fight Antony's fleet all at once, only to wait. Let the winds weaken his enemy. Let famine do what swords could not. And all the while, his messengers in Rome declared Antony already defeated, the battle won before it began.
Now I see. I fought 2 battles that year. One on the waves, and one in the hearts of men. And maybe, amici miei, it was the second one that was already lost.
And so, as dawn rose over the Gulf of Actium, the sea fell silent for a final breath. 2 fleets stared across the glittering horizon. 2 worlds about to collide. The drums began to beat. The oars struck water. And history itself leaned forward to watch. Part 3. Into the Fray. The morning mist clings to the Gulf of Actium, where 2 fleets wait beneath the rising sun. 500 warships stretch across the water, masts like forests, hulls like fortresses, men packed shoulder to shoulder, ready to decide the fate of the world. For a moment, silence. Then, the horns sound. Oars strike water. The sea begins to move. Is this how republics end? With shouting, or with the slow turning of oars? Can history itself hold its breath before it breaks?
Forward! Keep the formation! Steady, ragazzi, steady!
Antony's center surges ahead, colossal galleys grinding through the waves, their rams gleaming bronze. Archers line the decks, bowstrings drawn tight. At the signal they release, a dark cloud hisses through the sky. The first volley rains down upon Octavian's line.
Archers, again! Burn their sails, avanti! Show them the fire of Roma!
But Agrippa's fleet is lighter, faster, ships darting between the giants like wasps around lions. Flaming javelins streak across the gulf, smashing into Antony's hulls. Tar catches. The smell of burning pitch spreads over the water. The sea itself begins to burn.
Catapults! Fire! Don't let them close in! Per Giove, hold the line!
Huge stones crash into enemy decks, splinters and men scatter together. But the rhythm of command begins to falter. Drums fade beneath the roar of fire and screams of the dying. The wind shifts. Heavy eastern ships drift, sluggish and trapped. Agrippa seizes the moment. His right flank strikes like a blade, cutting deep into Antony's line.
Right wing! Hold! By the gods, hold! Non cedere! Don't give an inch!
Smoke rolls across the decks. Signals vanish. Each ship becomes an island of confusion, blind and alone. A galley beside Antony's flagship explodes as its magazines ignite. Flaming debris rains across the sea. The water hisses, thick with ash and oil. Can valor stand against fire? Or does courage drown when no one can see the shore?
Keep rowing! Push them back! Hold the center! For Roma! Don't let them break through!
Then a change in color on the horizon. Purple sails. Cleopatra's fleet. They catch the new wind and turn south. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Even the sea seems to hesitate.
No, she can't. Not now. Signal her back. Raise the flags. Cleopatra, return to the line.
But her ships keep sailing, out of the Gulf into the open sea. To the men still fighting, it looks like betrayal. The cry spreads from deck to deck. "The Queen is fleeing!" And with those words, discipline breaks. Some drop their oars, others curse her name. Others simply stare as her sails fade into the distance.
Hold the line! She'll return. She has to. Cleopatra, perché? What have you done?
Antony's officers look to him for command, but the line is already collapsing. Agrippa presses forward, his ships circling like wolves. The sea fills with fire and wreckage. The roar of battle becomes a single, endless sound. Wood breaking, men screaming, gods silent.
South! Turn south! Follow her! Seguite la regina! Go!
And with that order, the battle's fate is sealed. Antony's flagship breaks from the burning gulf, oars biting into the waves toward Cleopatra's retreating sails. Behind him, his fleet is surrounded. By nightfall, only smoke remains where once sailed the pride of the East. So ends the last battle of the Roman Republic. Not with triumph, but with fire upon the sea. Was it betrayal that doomed Antony? Or love that blinded him? And if the wind had turned another way, would Europe have ever known emperors, or still remembered the name of the Republic?
Rome burns within me, more fiercely than the ships I've lost. Sempre, Roma.
The flames of Actium sink into darkness. The sea falls silent, and the Republic with it. Now comes the reckoning, not of swords, but of what rises from the ashes. Part 4. The Price of Victory. When the sea finally fell silent, the numbers spoke more clearly than any survivor could. Out of more than 500 ships, barely a third of Antony's fleet made it home. Thousands of sailors and soldiers, men from Rome, Egypt, Greece, Syria, disappeared beneath the waves. Octavian lost fewer than 50 vessels, yet gained something greater than any fleet: the world itself. Strange, isn't it? How one morning can decide the shape of centuries. How many dreams sank with those ships? How many men believed they were fighting for glory, and instead built someone else's future? Rome didn't just win a war that day. It claimed the power to decide what victory would mean for the next 2,000 years.
She waits for me in Alexandria. The sun still shines on the marble, pretending nothing has changed. But even the wind, it smells of defeat.
While Antony drifts toward his end, Octavian sails home a hero. He doesn't need to conquer anymore. The Senate crowns him willingly. They call him Augustus, the Exalted One. And the Republic, that proud, chaotic experiment, ends not in rebellion, but in applause. Rome no longer belongs to its people. It belongs to history's first emperor. Have you ever wondered how freedom fades Not with armies, but with exhaustion. After years of war, betrayal, and hunger, Romans were tired. Too tired to argue, too tired to fight. So they traded freedom for peace. And peace, this time, came wrapped in marble.
They'll call it peace, but it will be the silence after a storm, not the calm before dawn. Capisci?
In Egypt, the end comes quietly. Octavian's legions enter Alexandria without a fight. Antony takes his own life, refusing to be paraded through the streets of Rome as a warning. Cleopatra follows him soon after, the asp pressed gently to her skin. Her death marks not just the fall of a queen, but the end of an age. The last light of pharaohs fading into Rome's new dawn. Can you imagine that silence? The marble halls empty. The sound of the sea outside her palace. Did she know her story would outlive her? Or did she simply hope the world would remember her name kindly?
He thinks he's building peace, but he's only building memory. Solo memoria.
But Augustus does more than claim power. He reshapes the world. He rebuilds Rome from the ruins of civil war, turning brick into marble. You can still walk among his legacy today. The Ara Pacis Augusti, the altar of peace, still stands in Rome, carved with scenes of unity and prosperity. The Forum of Augustus, once the shining heart of imperial authority, still marks the map of the modern city. And think about it. How many leaders have ever reshaped a city so completely that we still walk its roads 2,000 years later? He didn't just rebuild Rome. He redefined what civilization itself would look like.
So his peace endures, see, but not his mercy.
The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, lasts for more than 2 centuries. Under it, cities flourish, art and law spread across the continent, and Europe's shape begins to emerge. Even after the empire itself falls, its bones remain. Latin becomes the root of European languages. Roman law, the seed of justice. Roman roads, the arteries of nations. Have you ever walked through Paris or Barcelona, maybe Vienna or Cologne, and felt like the streets themselves were older than memory? That's because they are. Those cities grew where Rome once planted its flags. That is the true victory of Actium, not the burning ships, but the world that rose quietly from their ashes.
He built forever, but forever always forgets who paid the price.
And that's the truth of Actium. The day one man gained peace, and the world gained empire. Rome never looks back, and neither did Europe. The Republic ended, but its shadow became the foundation of everything that followed. And maybe that's what makes history so haunting. It never truly ends, does it? It lingers in the stones, in the words we speak, in the choices we still make, because some victories never die. They simply change their shape. Part 5. Echoes from the Past. History doesn't vanish. It sinks beneath the waves and waits. Silent, patient, eternal. For nearly 2 millennia, no one knew where the Battle of Actium had truly been fought. Poets guessed, scholars argued, sailors told their own versions. But the sea never forgets, does it? Then, at the end of the 20th century, the silence finally broke. Off the western coast of Greece, near Preveza, archaeologists discovered the graveyard of Antony's fleet. Beneath layers of sand and time, they found the bones of a vanished war. Charred timbers, shattered bronze rams, anchors still resting where fear had dropped them. Even today, the seabed bears scars, long gouges and trenches from ships that clashed and sank. Isn't it strange how destruction outlives glory?
So the sea remembered, when Rome chose to forget. Every broken hull they raise carries the names they erased. Soldiers, sailors, men who believed we could still change the course of empire. They call it ruin. Io la chiamo prova che abbiamo vissuto. I call it proof we lived.
High above that coastline, Octavian, soon to be Augustus, made sure his version of memory stood higher than the waves. He built the Tropaeum Actiacum, the Trophy of Actium, a marble monument overlooking the Gulf. He filled it with the bronze rams from captured ships, turning weapons into trophies. Even now, the sockets where those rams once stood stare down from the hillside like hollow eyes.
He built his glory on my silence, but silence isn't surrender. It's waiting, aspettando. One day the stones crumble, and the truth breathes again.
From that monument grew a city, Nicopolis, the city of victory. Temples, theaters, arches, all to praise the man who ended Rome's civil wars. Every 4 years, festivals filled its streets, celebrating peace, order, and the emperor's name. But tell me, what kind of peace needs parades to prove it exists? He gave the world calm, but only by giving it chains.
Nicopolis, his victory wrapped in marble. Let them sing their hymns. The ground beneath those temples still belongs to the dead.
Octavian's ambition didn't stop with monuments. It reached into time itself. A generation earlier, Julius Caesar had reshaped the calendar, naming a month after himself, July. Augustus followed his uncle's example, renaming the month Sextilis as August to celebrate his triumphs, including Actium. But he went further. He added extra days so August would stand equal to July in length and importance. Can you imagine that kind of legacy? To bend time itself so the world never stops speaking your name? Every August, when the sun burns brightest, we still whisper, Augustus, without even realizing it.
He ruled even the calendar. Caesar took the sun. Octavian took the year. Their months still stand where our legions fell.
The ancient writers tried to capture the storm. Cassius Dio blamed the winds that betrayed Antony. Plutarch wrote of love and tragedy. Horace sang of the golden peace that followed. 3 men, 3 truths. Whose version would you believe? The poet, the historian, or the survivor? And still, the story keeps returning. Cinema, television, and books all chase Actium's shadow. In Cleopatra, 1963, it shimmered with grandeur. Later, it grew human again. The BBC's I, Claudius revealed Augustus as the quiet architect of empire. HBO's Rome brought the blood and betrayal to life. Antony, proud and doomed. Octavian, cold and unyielding. From Rome, Empire Without Limit, to Netflix's Roman Empire, even Rise of Empires Rome, 2023. The question never fades. Was it destiny? Or simply the wind that crowned Augustus?
Let them keep telling it. Every story, every stage, every screen keeps the memory alive. Because Rome was not built only by those who won, but by those who dared to lose.
And maybe that's why Actium never fades. It lives in the ruins of Nicopolis, in the words of poets, in the rhythm of our history. Every empire since has echoed it, knowingly or not, because Actium wasn't only the end of a battle, it was the beginning of a world. But tell me this, what if the tide had turned? What if the East had risen instead of the West? What if love had won and empire had drowned? Let's turn the wind and see what might have been. Part 6. What if? What if the wind had shifted, just once? What if Cleopatra's sails had filled to charge, not to flee, and Antony's fleet had crushed Octavian's before noon? The sea would still have turned red that morning, but the story of the world would not. Imagine Antony victorious at Actium, Octavian defeated, his legions scattered along the coast of Epirus, Rome, weary, wounded, longing for peace, ready to follow whoever could offer it. Antony sails home not as a traitor, but as a savior, the restorer of the Republic. And beside him stands Cleopatra, queen, ally, equal, her golden sails bright with the promise of a new dawn.
We would have built an empire between continents, not upon them. Alexandria, Rome, Athens, 3 hearts beating as one. The strength of Rome's legions, the wisdom of Greece, the soul of Egypt, all flowing together like the Nile and the Tiber meeting the same sea. Una sola marea.
Had that happened, the center of the world might not have been Rome at all. It would have been Alexandria, city of light, of knowledge, of tolerance. The library of Alexandria, spared from flame, might have become the heartbeat of science for millennia, keeping safe the wisdom of Egypt, the mathematics of India, the philosophy of Greece. Can you imagine a world without the Dark Ages? A world where knowledge never had to be rediscovered, because it was never lost. And what of faith? Cleopatra ruled under gods that blended East and West. Isis and Venus, Horus and Apollo. In their union, divinity was shared, not divided. Would religion have grown as harmony instead of conquest? Would Europe have known crusades? Would one cross have ruled 1,000 altars? Or would the gods have shared the sky in uneasy peace?
If we had won, the gods would have spoken in many tongues, and no man would have dared to silence one in the name of another.
The language of empire might have changed too. Instead of Latin binding Europe, it could have been Greek, the language of philosophy, of reason, of art. Imagine a continent where law sounds like poetry, where scholars from Athens to Alexandria speak in one shared tongue. What kind of Europe would that have been? One ruled not by legions, but by ideas. Even power itself would have flowed differently. Without Octavian, there would be no Pax Romana, no empire commanding all borders from a single throne. Authority might have shifted eastward, toward the crossroads of Syria, Mesopotamia, Persia, and beyond, along the Silk Road to India. Trade and culture would have followed the sunrise. Europe might have become the edge, not the center, of the known world.
Rome's name might have endured, but its voice would have faded, its roads unfinished, its legions forgotten, its language swallowed by the wind.
Without Augustus to unite it, Europe might never have learned to connect itself. No Roman roads stretching from Gaul to Hispania, or from Britain to the Rhine. No Latin to link nations, faiths, and laws. No bridges to turn wilderness into world. Would Gaul have remained a patchwork of tribes? Germania, an untamed frontier? Would the north have stayed a forest of silence, untouched by marble, by empire, by time? And while the west faded into mist, the east would have thrived. Perhaps power would have settled in Babylon, Jerusalem, Antioch, or even India. The maps of our world would have been drawn around rivers, not borders. Can you picture it? A Europe not of kings, but of shadows. A continent remembered only by the whisper of its trees.
Perhaps that was the price of dreaming too far. To make the world one, You must sometimes let part of it fade. Even victory can cast a shadow.
So what would Europe be in that other history? A wilderness of tribes, no roads, no common language, no bridges between hearts or nations. Would there be unity at all, or only the echoes of what could have been? In the Europe we know, Rome triumphed. And from its ambition came order, law, and language. In the Europe that might have been, civilization turned eastward, and the forests of the West remained wild. Both worlds were possible. Only one survived the wind. The waves of Actium fall silent, and Rome stands alone, victorious, unchallenged, and certain of its destiny. From the ashes of the Republic, an empire rises, vast, disciplined, unstoppable. But every victory casts a shadow, and beyond the Rhine, that shadow waits.
I am Publius Quinctilius Varus, governor of the Rhine provinces, and servant of Emperor Augustus. I march not for conquest, but for order. My duty is to bring Roman law and peace to the forests of Germania, to turn wilderness into province, and chaos into civilization. The tribes there, they are restless, yes, but loyal. And beside me I have a trusted ally, a soldier born of those same tribes. His name is Arminius. With his help, Rome's peace will reach even the darkest corners of the world.
But peace can be a dangerous illusion. And loyalty, the most fragile armor of all. Sometimes the deadliest blades are not drawn in battle, but hidden behind a smile. Have you ever wondered what happens when an empire trusts the wrong man? When the forest closes behind 3 legions, and not one returns? Then join us for the next episode of Battles That Shaped Europe. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest, 9 CE.